welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. It's I know my times are a little bit all over. The last time we all met was on a Sunday when Dr. Lodi joined us. And tonight I'm so thrilled to have Helen join us, Helen Altman. A lot of you know Helen and some of you might not. Helen's an amazing Helen and I have known each other for a couple of years. I was very pleased to meet her years ago when I was teaching at a yoga studio in town. Helen's an amazing Ayurvedic practitioner, a yoga teacher herself, a therapeutic yoga, been doing that for many years. But I really got introduced to Helen through the Ayurvedic community, so to speak. And she's been has studied for many years. Her influences are quite amazing, one of which, and Helen's busy studying and doing further studies with Dr. Vignesh as well, which we're going to chat about later. So tonight I wanted to have Helen join us and chat about sort of the everydayness of Ayurveda. It's such a complicated and a huge topic. But it's really the integration of it into our everyday life, and Helen's so versed in it, runs so many retreats, and deals with people, has her own consultation practice in Cape Town. So Helen, welcome to Conversations. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thanks, Elaine. Thanks so much for asking me. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, everyone, for joining. It really does feel like a conversation in the kitchen. Yes. So happy to be here.
Wonderful. Helen, I know you've been, you've practiced, you've studied, and you run your retreats. Where, so your relationship with Ayurveda is over quite a few years now, many years. Where did your passion and your love for Ayurveda start from? What was the startings of
Ayurveda? Well, I think it found me firstly, rather than me finding it. And as with most things, it kind of evolves slowly and just grows and grows. But the seeds were there many years ago when I first started studying yoga. So we're talking 40 years ago, long time ago, where people in Cape Town certainly didn't even know that yoga existed.
Yes,
and in the yoga courses, we were already introduced to the idea of Ayurveda. And yoga and Ayurveda are not actually separate disciplines. They come from the same body of knowledge. They come from the Vedas. And people think of yoga as very physically orientated and having to do with health, and Ayurveda as this sort of enormously broad subject that often it's kind of difficult to access. But in fact, it's the reverse. Ayurveda is the science, the art, the practice, the Vedic knowledge of healing, and yoga is the practice and embodiment of enlightenment. So they are actually, they're sister sciences, and Dr. Farhi has written the most beautiful book called Yoga and Ayurveda, Sister Sciences, which I would highly recommend. So it started, as I say, about 40 years ago in my yoga course. And then as I went into the yoga therapy, I did it over 5 years. So it was quite an intensive study period. Ayurveda was very much folded into it. And initially I wasn't particularly interested in Ayurveda, but I think that one is drawn, I think one of the motivators in working with healing is how to work with one's own pain. And I think that has been a motivator. Yeah, so it has a long history, and it certainly found me.
I love that. That's beautiful. We definitely, what do they say? you teach what you must learn. So, you know, often we land up in a profession where we've needed to learn it ourselves, and then learning from your own body to
Absolutely.
become the healer that you are
Yeah,
is really where the medicine sits, you know, so to speak.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And there's no end to it. It just keeps on unfolding. The word Ayurveda means the knowledge of life. And the essence of Ayurveda is to come into one's prakriti, come into one's essential nature. And that, of course, I mean, one lifetime is hardly long enough to begin to really explore that. But it's certainly a very, very helpful map
yeah,
to
yeah.
navigate the journey on. Yeah.
Um, when you started, I know you had amazing, amazing teachers,
Yeah.
of which were Donna Farhi and Dr. Vasant Lad.
Mm.
Would you share, like, tell us about the studies with them?
Well, Donna Farhi is a yoga therapist, a yoga teacher, and she works predominantly with yoga teachers and goes all over the world. She's an American woman. She lives in New Zealand, and her orientation around, um, when we say yoga, generally we're referring to asana practice, is quite different from what I had experienced in any other form or in any other class. In that she works with underlying principles. And I suppose in the same way, in a similar way, Ayurveda works with underlying principles. It's that which is not obvious. It's not like, tweak the shoulder and turn the hip. It's what is underlying, what is the pattern underlying it. And in the same way, Ayurveda looks at what are the underlying causes, the deep underlying causes that would give rise to an imbalance. Donna is a profound teacher, and she's really, really exceptional. And she does an extraordinary amount of research, which is, for the Western mind, it's good backup. You kind of want to know the facts and the figures, And she continues to be a teacher in my life. Dr. Vasant Lad, he's very, very Indian, and moved to the States a couple of decades ago through a calling, and divides his time between Albuquerque and Pune, I think. Yeah. He's the most humble man I have ever had the privilege of being in the company of. And I had a sense of something really running through him. Can I tell the story?
Yes, please do.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love that
yes,
story.
yes. It's a wonderful story, and it kind of tells you about the way he works. So a couple of years ago, I was in the UK, and I was doing some studies, intensive studies, with Ayurvedic practitioners from all over the world with Dr. Lad. And there were 72 of us. He's particularly renowned for his gift in pulse reading. So pulse reading is a way of tuning into the absolute essence of a person. You're tuning into the rhythms of the blood, and the blood has a lot of information, which one can measure and also one cannot measure. And so when he said, today's the day for pulse reading, immediately my head starts nodding. Today's the day for pulse reading. It was like, whoa, okay. And we each had a chance to have our pulses read by him. So the queue formed immediately. And I was sitting right in the front row because I didn't want to be more than a meter apart from him for the whole week. And I'd made a friend with a Belgian woman who had told me a little bit about her life. Anyway, she came up and sat in front of Dr. Lad. And there are different ways of reading the pulse, but he reads the pulse with both hands. So he'll put his fingers on both the right and the left, and he goes very quiet. And the speed at which he picks up in the information is phenomenal. It's not like he has to kind of listen in with his fingers and kind of orientate. It's like download.
Yeah.
And so she was sitting in front of him. He places his hands on her pulses and her wrists, and each finger is related to a different dosha. And then there's 5 sub-doshas. So if you think of one finger, and it has 5 sub-doshas, and within those 5 sub-doshas, I think it's there 3 different readings that you can take. So there's a lot of information that you can pick up if you're very skilled. So he listened in, and he started speaking to her in a particularly obscure dialect of Hindi. And I was like, okay, what's going on now? So he chatted away, and I said to her afterwards, well, what was that about? And she said that she had been in India many, many years before, like a decade before, and she was in this very remote part of India. She was studying Sanskrit and Indian dance, and she had picked up the language. And he had picked up the language in her pulse.
Wow.
I mean, it is pretty phenomenal.
Wow.
And there was another incident where he was listening to somebody else's pulse, and he could pick up the parents' and the grandparents' pulse in this person, which he then, I mean, he thought that was, basic, fairly obvious, and tried to teach it to us, but we were just rookies, So yeah, it was just phenomenal, actually, seeing the amount of information you can actually pick up when you so finely attuned and you have the experience and the gift and the knowledge to get that information.
Sure, that is amazing. I just love that story, so I'm so pleased. That's phenomenal level of downloading, really.
Yep.
Right. Chat to us about, getting to the nitty-gritty. Chat to us about I know you studied a lot with Dr. Vignesh as well, who's a regular guest here, and and being able to almost be you visited him a couple of times and sat in his consultations studying under him. That experience of doing it as opposed to, because you have your own consulting practice here, and you've run retreats for many years and had clients in South Africa for many years. Chat to us about what it was like in India and sort of how it's approached there, or that experience being in India there, under the guide of Dr. Vignesh.
When I was in India, I wasn't studying under him. I was very much always on the receiving end as a patient. So that was very, very different. When he's come to South Africa, I've invited him, and he's been here on 2 occasions, more recently in December, January. And it was my absolute privilege to be able to sit in on the consultations. So that's really where the learning happens. That's what happens. But what's interesting is that every Ayurvedic doctor has their very particular approach. And so it becomes very discursive. For example, in India, when you go and see, not always, but certainly at Sitaram, where I was doing Panchakarma, as you also experienced, there are 5 doctors.
Yes.
And that's the nature of it, is that it's discursive, is that one person, and it will go in terms of seniority. So it will be the person that wonderful lady doctor of 40 years experience. And then, the senior doctor, Dr. Vignesh, might or might not be there. Then there'll be, the doctor who's more recently qualified, and then somebody who's kind of newer to the whole discipline. And so there's this kind of hierarchical but very, very discursive approach in Ayurveda. So it isn't the sense of, okay, that doctor has the answer. It's okay, this is what we're picking up. That's what that doctor's picking up. They might have a discussion and then come to a particular kind of set of protocols and treatments. In South Africa, we don't have that situation. So when Dr. Vignesh comes here, what I found remarkable about him, and questioned him many times, but it's a difficult thing to answer, is how can you sum up what is the core issue of the person? And he'd sum it up within minutes. And he wouldn't reveal that to the person. What he would reveal is the questioning. He wouldn't assume any kind of conclusive knowledge. He'd have the intuition around what the core issue is, and the core issue might be physical, it might be emotional, it might be ancestral, it might be kind of inherited karmic patterns, it might be mental. And so often people were maybe a little confused in terms of their expectations around how a consultation should go, in that a doctor would just tell them, this and that's wrong with you, these are the treatments, these are the medicines, and off you go, and I'll see you for the next consultation or not. So what he does is he has this kind of intuitive gift that puts him in touch with what the core issue is, and he then unfolds in the patient a willingness to be able to see their challenges and how they might take that on. So he totally empowers the patient in their journey of healing, which is very, very different to a Western view. And I think as patients, it's quite a mind shift.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's not like there's major discussion between Dr. Vignesh and his patient, but there is a constant opening and questioning. Okay, so this would lead to that. And the person might go away, and weeks, months later, a penny might drop. Okay.
Yes, totally. I totally hear, because that's the thing, with the Western way of approaching medicine, it's health, it's all about mainly about the physical body. But we really are made up of 4 bodies. We have a mental, an emotional, and energetic body, and it's not that's not the norm in the West. So people are struggling with maybe sort of a stomach disorder, or whatever it is, back pain. That's just the physical manifestation that has been born through the evolution of their emotional, energetic, and mental bodies. So I hear you.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Elaine, because I think that's what's fundamentally different in terms of a medical system between Ayurveda and Western models, in that the Western model will look at the physical as though that is the illness. And we need to fix the illness. We need to relieve the person of the symptoms of the discomfort of the illness. And that is the healing. Whereas in Ayurveda, there are 5 koshas. The koshas are the layers. There's the physical kosha, there's the emotional kosha, there's the mental kosha, there's the intuitive kosha, and there's the kosha that's called the bliss kosha. So in terms of how disease manifests in the cells, physically, it's the last place. It first manifests in the bliss realm, in the etheric realm, and then it moves down into the intuitive realm, and then into the mental realm, then into the emotional realm, and finally, when the messages haven't gotten through due to a lack of connection with that intelligence, finally it manifests. The body is so patient. Finally, weeks, months, years later, it manifests in the cells. And so to uncover the healing in Ayurveda, one might actually approach it from an Annamaya kosha, or an emotional kosha, or a mental kosha. And that's often not what people want to hear. They don't want to hear where the root cause is lying, because then we have to shift into taking full responsibility.
And participate, yes.
Absolutely. Fully participate, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more, there's a lot more work involved in that process. But when you get to the root cause, you empower yourself and can really free yourself of that discomfort, dis-ease in the body. You know, otherwise it just plays itself over and over like a stuck record, really. So
well, it'll just find different. If you, let's say, you fix the cell in the heart, and the cause is actually lying on an emotional level, then it's going to migrate to some other place. Yeah. And you're going to fix that place, and then it will migrate to another place. You know, it will find a way to manifest, to give its message, until the message is decoded, unraveled, and that's when the healing really starts.
Yeah, I love that. That's why I think when one does discover Ayurveda and starts getting involved in it, even if it's just going to do a panchakarma or meeting practitioners like you, like Dr. Vignesh, and starting to become more informed, you just realize the magnificence of the human beingness. I was going to say body, but our many bodies, and how we operate, and the power that it gives you, as opposed to the disempowerment that I feel Western medicine gives.
Absolutely. So in Western medicine, we often go from one doctor to another doctor to another doctor to another doctor, to find a way of taking away the discomfort.
Yes, absolutely. So delving deeper into sort of implementing everyday Ayurvedic tools. Share with us, how we could, not being able to necessarily go to Sitaram at the moment, and visit Dr. Vignesh's retreat center, or have the time. How can people right here, right now, integrate it into their everyday?
There's a concept called dinacharya, and it's really at the absolute core of Ayurveda. It's like it's the jewel. And dinacharya means dina is daily, charya is routine. Okay. But it's not routine in the sense of, same old, because in Ayurveda, we work very, very individually. So each person has their particular nature, their particular karmic package. And so the system needs to be applied to particular people, at particular life phases, particular orientations, particular challenges, etc., etc. But what happens, and Ayurveda can be very, very broad, and there's sort of endless philosophical discussions around it, but it can also be very, very simple and very, very user-friendly. And this dinacharya, this daily routine, is really around coming into rhythm. So you can think of it as daily rhythms. And the daily rhythms are not just your own personal rhythms, but they also are related to the rhythms of the sun and the moon, day and night. And they're related to different qualities that are particular at different times of day. So perhaps some of you might have heard of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Okay, so Vata, Pitta, and Kapha are not kind of set things that are categories. It's not like people come to me and they say, well, am I Vata Pitta or am I Pitta Kapha? You're way, way more than that. Vata, Pitta, Kapha are categories of physical, psychological, mental constellations that give you a particular leaning, a particular inclination. And they're made up of the elements. I'm just going to go backtrack a little bit. Yeah.
Please do. Yes, absolutely.
So the nature of Vata, Pitta, Kapha and the elements, I'll come back to Dinacharya, I'll link it all up. The nature of the elements is that they come not from, they come from an understanding, a Vedic understanding from Sankhya philosophy of a sense of unity, of a sense of extraordinary vastness and of nothingness. The sense of one's nature before one was born. Yeah, the sense of the nature of the cosmos before it was born. So when you come into rhythm, daily rhythm, you're coming into rhythm not only with yourself, but you're coming into rhythm with the natural forces of the earth, the water, the air, the fire, the ether, and those forces that created the cosmos in the very, very first place, before the Big Bang, or whatever, cosmology you believe in. So it's around coming into a profound alignment with the forces that created you, which brings you into your prakriti. Now, your prakriti is your essential nature. And for health to really flower, that is the space that you're wanting to touch into. So, for example, the breath, there's the inhalation, there's the curve, there are 4 parts, and there's the exhalation. At the end of the exhalation, there's that pause, there's that natural pause, and one can learn to rest in that pause for a very, very long time. Now, this is something I also learned from Donna, is that in that pause, that is the space where one's natural healing intelligence, that intelligence that lies in the cosmos, is catalyzed. It's not in the inhalation, it's not in the turning, it's not in the exhalation, but it's actually in that silent pause where the natural intelligence healing mechanism gets touched into, gets attuned with. So to go back to the days, to Vata, Pitta, Kapha, the day itself is divided, we call it an Ayurvedic clock. Okay, so there are times of the day where Vata is predominant, where the etheric and air elements are dominant. There are times of the day where the Pitta element is dominant, where the fire and earth element, fire and water element is dominant. And there are times of the day, you can just think of it actually as air, fire, and water. And there are times of the day when the Kapha element is dominant. So if we just think for a moment, quite naturally, there's a point at which it all just feels like common sense. This is like what you would naturally do in a day anyway. From 6 a.m. until 10 a.m. is the Kapha time. So the Kapha time is not a time to go running around. The kapha time is a watery time. It's a reflective time. It's a time of inner cultivation. It's a nourishing time. Then from 10 until 2 is the pitta time. So then the fire element is dominant. And then one gets more active. It's also when the sun is highest. And it's around transformation. The fire transforms things. You know, you burn wood, you get warm. Yeah, you don't get warm from the log that's sitting there. You get warm because the log has been burnt and it's been transformed, and therefore the warmth happens. So, for example, we would have from 10 until 2 as a period of pitta, of activity and of digestion. So pitta rules digestion. And then the vata time is from 2 in the afternoon until 6 p.m. And the vata time is the air and etheric element as the dominant nature. And there you would, it's a time of thinking, of creativity. Yeah. And then that cycle repeats. Yeah. So we go then in the evening from 6 until 10. So now I'm doing a very vata activity in a kapha time.
Yes.
Okay. So I know I'm not going to sleep well tonight because I start preparing for bed by 7:30 because I'm in the kapha time. So it's a time of turning inward. It's a time of reflection. It's a time of quietness. It's a time of connecting with the watery element, both internally and externally. At night, from 10 until 2, if you could visualize the clock, from 10 until 2 is often a time of a lot of dreaming. So it's quite active. You're metabolizing the unconscious aspects of your inner world. And then when people come to me and they say, I'm always waking up at around 2 o'clock. I don't know what to do. Okay, so from 2 to 6 is the vata time. So if someone's telling me that they're waking up between 2 and 6, I know that there's something in the nerve, because vata, being air and ether, rules the nervous system. So there's something in the nervous system that's needing rebalancing in order to allow for a more restful sleep. So then the cycle starts again.
It makes so much sense. It's amazing. That's what I love about Ayurveda. It has this. It's just, like you say, there's a complexity when you first meet it or you first introduce it.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
actually, it's based on the most profound simplicity. I mean, it almost feels like the wrong adjective, but you know what I mean. There's such
Absolutely.
a profound simplicity, and if we just stopped getting in our own way, maybe
Yeah. Yes.
thinking that overthinking of stuff, and
Yeah.
implement these small tools. Just think about the logic of like listening to the body that is so finely tuned in. It's actually so brilliant. We get in the way of it, and then syncing it with the rhythms, like you say, of the day, of the seasons. um, Definitely that in and of itself, would make us healthier, just just moving with that sort of mind. um, Chat to us. I know that in your consulting that you do with people, you cover such an array of health diseases or challenges that people have. Um, Share with us maybe sort of the contrast of looking at something. We have already touched into it, but sort of a typical health challenge that someone comes to you with, where the Western modalities would look at it from one way, and how the Ayurvedically there's so much more information.
Right.
Common kind of
Yeah. Yeah. You know, much of Ayurvedic healing is around an attunement and a conversation between the Ayurvedic practitioner or the Ayurvedic doctor and the patient. And as much as one would want to kind of rescue or heal or, kind of give the answers to the patient, if the patient isn't brought on board, nothing happens. Actually, nothing happens. So someone can come and usually people come to Ayurveda as a last resort. They've tried everything. They've tried Western medicine. They've tried homeopathy and naturopathy and a whole host, and they've not had success. So we often deal with the people who are really, really desperate, and who are really, really ill, and who really, really want solutions and are willing to try anything.
At that point. But at least they're open.
Yes,
That's
yes,
the
yes.
key. They need to be open
They need to be
for these
open.
things to happen.
Yeah, they need to be desperate. They need to be ill. They need to be open. And then I think the simplest way in is usually through treatments, because treatments, an embodied experience, people, it's tangible. If you say to somebody, can you change your daily regime from waking up, drinking coffee, brushing your teeth, answering the phone, and dashing out, can you change that to, waking up before the sun rises, doing half-hour meditation, oiling your face, oiling your nose, oiling your mouth? They'll look at me as though I'm crazy. It's like, what? I don't have time for that. I've got a deadline. I've got to be out by 8 o'clock. There's no ways I can do that. Okay. But if you say to a patient, can you come in for an abhyanga, an oil massage? Okay. There's something around the oil, the warmth, the nourishment, and the actual feeling of well-being that allows the patient to begin to trust you, and to begin to, on a cellular level, they begin to feel intuitively, this feels nice. Let me try something else. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so it's around that conversation, and it's around building a trustful and nurturing relationship, so that the person feels really supported from underneath, that this practitioner is going to hold them emotionally and going to guide them mentally and facilitate the healing. It's not like they're given something and they then have to go away and implement it.
Yeah. I think that's such a key, because
I don't know if I've answered your question, but that was my response.
you have, though, because what it brings to mind for me is that the thing that's the most missing, and especially when one lands up getting, the more severe the diagnosis, for lack of a better word, is within the Western realm of medicine, like with health, being cancer, autoimmune diseases. The more extreme it is, the more distant the doctors become. You become part of a protocol. That nurturing element is the element that is the most missing, I find, and the most needed. So, just speaking about that nurturing element, adding that to the dynamic, getting, adding the being involved in the mental capacity of where a patient is, the emotional state of where someone is, holding them energetically. For me, going through my sort of health conditions over the years, the most important thing, the learning was, and when I listened to you speak, it's that people need nurturing. It's teaching them how to nurture themselves. And so that's what the Ayurveda does. There's a synergy happening, there's a collaboration,
Mm,
uh,
mm,
as opposed to, okay, doctor, help me, my hands are cuffed. Like you put my pieces together.
mm,
Um,
mm,
so
mm.
so it does. It really just shares that. Um, I wanted to
Can
ask
I
you.
just go back to the dinacharya? Because I
Yes,
never got back to
yes,
it. So the dinacharya as the jewel is largely preventative. Yeah,
yes,
preventative. So you asked the question, how can you simply implement that in your day?
yes.
So there are many, many steps that one can do. Okay. But if one had to choose maybe just 5 really, really important things, okay, to do in the morning, to kind of set your foundation. It's like a house. This is the house that we live in. It's a mobile house, okay? How are you going to set the foundation of your house? If the foundation of your house is like jumping around, you're not going to have a very stable abode. Everything's going to be jumping around for the rest of the day. So the thing of dinacharya is as you awaken into the day and as you awaken into your conscious embodied experience, there's certain practices that will stabilize you, that will create a good foundation. It's like having like a really, really good nourishing breakfast. You feel, okay, as opposed to taking the sip of coffee, hitting a sugar low at 11 and, then everything's pear-shaped anyway. So some of the things, some of the treatments that self treatments that we use is a lot of oil. There's a hell of a lot of oiling in Ayurveda. I mean, we oil every single orifice, literally every single orifice. Okay, from the top to the bottom, it's all around oiling. And the reason for that, well, there are many reasons, but the one reason I'll mention this evening is that the aging process is a vata process. It's a drying process. Yeah. So people get wrinkled, people's bones become brittle, people kind of get smaller and drier. Yeah. So we want to keep that juiciness in the body. And the senses, we place enormous emphasis on the senses. Very little emphasis on musculature, for example. Okay, a hell of a lot of emphasis on the head and on these apertures that interface with the world, through which we make sense of the world. So simply bathing one's eyes. So we balance the practices between cleansing and nourishing. So for example, we cleanse the eyes, okay? We'll blow the nose, we'll wash out the mouth, we'll clean the ears. So there's the cleansing, and then after the cleansing, there's the nourishing. You might bathe your eyes with, soaked triphala. That would nourish the eyes and improve the eyesight. We put oil in the nose every day, nasya, and that actually moves right up to the brain. So you're actually having a direct access into the brain and into the sinuses. One of the things with COVID, one of the protocols that we used as a COVID prevention technique was to encourage people to do nasya, because this was the aperture. Yeah. If it's nourished, if it's strong, if it has a good barrier, then the stuff can't go in.
Yeah.
So we cleanse the tongue, we wash it, we oil it, we do oil pulling, you gargle endlessly, and you kickstart your digestion. Yeah. And then you spit out the oil, and you oil your ears, and then you oil your whole face, and you oil your head regularly. So cleansing and oiling in the morning is really, really important. And at night, one of the wonderful ways to get a better night's sleep is to oil one's feet.
Okay.
Yeah, every night to oil one's feet, to give them a little massage, put warm socks on as the cooler months are coming now, because the vata will, people with high vata will have cold feet. Yeah. So you want to balance the vata. You want to nourish everything and through the soles of the feet. The oil goes right through into the 7 dhatus. It's not just the skin. It goes through to the lymph, to the bone, to the blood, and it can get absorbed there in the night. You can also put oil on the crown of your head, which is a wonderful way of also getting a good night's sleep, and oils in your palms. Also oil in your navel. I mean, every single orifice is oiled in Ayurveda.
What oil, is there a particular oil that you would suggest?
Yeah, so sesame oil is a very, very nourishing oil and can be used by most people. In the heat of summer, sesame oil has a warming quality, so it would be better to use a coconut oil in the heat of summer, but in the transition seasons, in the spring and in the autumn and in the winter time, sesame oil is the go-to oil.
Perfect. Oh, that sounds wonderful. I mean, well, speaking about oils and what is your, it obviously links to how we eat as well. So
Yes.
Ayurvedically, what is suggested, what is the protocol in terms of
Orientation, yeah. So in the same way that we want to oil our senses, we want to keep our intestines and our whole digestive system unctuous, oiled, lubricated. So constipation is a dry gut. So there's too much dryness. So there's certain foods such as vata also has a cold quality. So in the Western view, we think of salads as healthy. Yeah, salads, the quality of salad is that it's cold and brittle and dry, and it might actually create further imbalance. So warm, nourishing food. I mean, khichdi is obviously the classic, but whatever you're cooking, you can always add a dollop of good ghee or olive oil, or just by cooking the food, it adds warmth to it. It makes it more easily digestible.
Yeah.
So cold smoothies in the morning, salads for lunch, and a salad for dinner is a complete no-no in Ayurveda. Warm, cooked, oily, unctuous food is the way forward. And if you've got a very, very strong digestion, if you've got a very, very strong, a good agni, a good digestive fire, then of course in the summer you can digest salads. Yeah. But a lot of people have dry guts.
That for me, when I went to Sitaram, it was actually such a relief to eat the food that they served us, which I must tell everybody was delicious. But it actually helped me set up how to eat coming back.
Yes.
Because I can't do a lot of raw food. I can't do, and and the warming of the vegetables really was the key to have. I just that actually solved all my gut issues.
Wow.
Following the way they eat, I pretty much. It's similar-ish. It's a sort of a good version without being exactly following. But it was interesting because the first time I went, it was the panchakarma, and I'm veering, so excuse me about that. But it's just so lovely, sort of chatting about a subject we're both so passionate about. But the first time I was introduced to Ayurveda and going to do a panchakarma, it really did detox my body, and I got, it was my post cancer thing. trip. And then I went the year afterwards, and I remember chatting to you, and you saying that's your medical aid, you know, going to have a panchakarma. And I so get that, you know. The second time I went, it wasn't as dramatic. It was fantastic. I loved it, but I didn't have the, you know, because there was drama that came out with the chemo. And it was very gentle the second time. I was like, oh, this is nice, you know. And then you follow it because they give you medication, and you follow it for the next 3 months. But what it actually did is the power of that second time going to do it set up a way of how to eat. Pretty much since then, I eat like that most of the time, you know. That is how I do love that nurturing quality of how they approach food, the warmer kind of foods, and there is that Western sort of model where, you know, and trends come in where you know, the smoothies are trendy. Mostly, I mean, for a lot of people, they aren't that healthy. They also, you know, along with being cold and not great for the digestive fire when you wake up in the morning, but have so much sugar in, they're not good for diabetes or cholesterol for the heart, you know, when there's that much sugar, whether it's, even if it is fructose. So, you know, I'm thinking it'd be so nice. Everybody is in the house. Let us open up and ask some, you know, anyone who wants to ask questions. It's such a treat to have Helen with us. She is in Cape Town, so you actually like can speak to her now and could go and see her. But please unmute yourselves and just ask away. Are there any questions, anything anyone's going through, or is anyone experienced, you know, done any Ayurveda or gone on a panchakarma? I'm just going to see if anybody wants to set up and start. Yes, Nick.
Hello, Helen.
Hi, Nick.
I promise it's not I'm not here to heckle. So for me, in terms of health, like where I find that my symptoms of what I think are like deeper things show up like physically, like biomechanically, rather than, you know, like digestive or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like, it feels like I've had a chronic shoulder issue, shoulder and neck pain. So, and I mean, I'm convinced that it's this kind of holding pattern. And there's like kind of excuses because I was a photographer for years and it's asymmetrical and, you know, but it feels like I'm convinced that there's an underlying thing that's happening on a kind of a more, less material level, less, you know, like gross matter kind of level. But does Ayurveda like look at stuff like that? Because
keep going.
No, because I sort of had no sense that it does. My sense of it is much more around the kind of I guess like, you know, like body processes, you know, rather than the kind of mechanical. I mean, you know.
Right. I mean, Ayurveda is 5,000 years old, and in exploring what it is to live in a body, there's, you know, a vast accumulation of knowledge. And of course, you know, muscular pain and joint discomfort and stiffness or whatever it is would be covered. So the short answer is yes, absolutely. It attends to all of that. Whatever the symptom is, there will be an exploration into why it's manifesting in that particular part of the body, in that particular form. And to kind of backtrack and unravel it, because you weren't always in that condition.
No, I mean, I definitely have a sense that, like, I mean, I was listening to someone talking the other day, and he was going on he was talking about how, like, you have, through the different layers of the body, from the gross, but it's very hard to actually fix something in the physical biomechanics if you're actually working with it on that level. You almost have to work on it on a higher level, and
Yeah, well, I have to work with it on all of those levels.
yeah.
So, for example, let's say you've got a frozen shoulder. Yeah, someone comes to me with a frozen shoulder with carpal tunnel.
Yeah.
Okay, which might seem, those are very particular. I mean, it's very particular in the joint, and it's around pain and discomfort. And
Yeah.
And then you would have treatments for those things. You would have particular medicines and poultices. What are they called? Poultices. Is that the word?
Yeah.
Poultices. Yeah, where you actually like make the medicines and then apply it.
Right.
And then we would look at yoga therapy is one strand of medicine in Ayurveda.
Okay.
It's not a separate discipline. So
Right.
an Ayurvedic doctor or an Ayurvedic practitioner would use yoga therapy as a medicine. So then we would So then we would look at particular movements that you should do, and then actually make a particular program for you that would help to improve that situation. Then there would be medicines that you would take as well. So it would be treatments, it would be medicines, it would include yoga therapy as part of the treatment plan. And then in the conversations, in the dialogue, what might emerge is other aspects that gave rise to it, like an emotional aspect or like a mental aspect. But we would see it more broadly within the context of the elements. What is out of balance? Usually when there's a sharp pain, you can track it down to a vata imbalance. Okay, if it's a dull, it depends on the quality of the pain. If it's a dull, long-term, persistent, deep pain, then it's usually a kapha imbalance. So then we would also work with diet. We would shift the diet and what's aggravating the vata or what's aggravating the kapha.
Yeah.
So there'd be a number of beads on that string.
Okay, that's super interesting. And then just one question for you.
Yes.
With all that oil, do you find that people slip and hurt themselves?
I do tell people to bring in socks and not to wear slip-slops and not to walk barefoot.
Do you have secondary side effects of concussion for a lot of your patients?
Hopefully not. Put on socks and put on a pair of good shoes and off you go.
Thanks. That's super interesting. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the question.
Thanks, Nick. Anyone else in the house that wants to ask Helen a question, anything pertaining to Ayurveda? I'm just looking around to see. Also, everyone's so shy. They love listening. People love listening, so we'll just continue chatting. So I wanted to share with everybody what's so exciting is that, so this week, I've just, having Helen here, we're going to continue this theme next week. So usually I know I leave a break of 2 weeks, but Dr. Vignesh is away the date that I wanted him to come. So he's actually going to be joining next week and continue the conversation. And Helen and I were chatting earlier on about the powers of intuition and how to deepen your powers of intuition, to deepen your healing potential. So I know that the Helen's busy studying further with him at the moment. Share with us just the course that you're doing at the moment and what you've come across, how it's expanding your knowledge of Ayurveda.
Thanks for the question, Elaine. No, there's an endless amount of stuff to read and an endless amount of stuff to listen to. I mean, I get sent stuff weekly. I mean, the amount of detail and discursiveness that happens within Ayurvedic doctor circles is mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. And I suppose there's a certain point at which it's like, I can't read or listen to one more thing. I'm like overloaded with info here. And it's deepening my understanding, but that's what it's doing. It's deepening my understanding. I'm a very practical person as well. So I've been looking for a course for quite a while around clinical application, around what actually happens when you're sitting in front of the patient. This is happening, and they're not the obvious things. So it's a 6-month intensive course around clinical application. Wow. That's an online course, and it's pretty intensive, I've got to say. And it's led by Dr. Vignesh, and they're practitioners from all over the world. And then at the end of that, there's a month-long internship. And that's really where one learns, when you're sitting with the 5 Ayurvedic doctors and a patient comes in, this is what's presented, and you hear the varying views, and you're seeing what is, and one person might say, no, that's definitely a vata imbalance, and it's an vata imbalance in the gut. And the other person will say, well, if you look a little bit deeper, there might actually be a kapha imbalance here, and that there's a stagnation that has actually led to it. So, I mean, it just can go on and on and on. And then out of the diagnosis comes the medicines, and the treatment plan and the food. So the medicines, the treatment plan, the food, and the yoga therapy are your skills. So yeah, please God, I will be going to India in July, August, and hopefully do my panchakarma. Panchakarma means 5 actions, and it's the 5 actions to deeply, deeply cleanse your cells, not just your gut. Every single cell in your body gets cleansed and renewed, reset, rebooted. A really good panchakarma can actually reset karmic patterns on a cellular level.
Sure.
So, and I certainly experienced that. And people often come to me and say, I'm at a fork in my road of my life, okay, and I'm needing something to meet me at this fork. And I'm kind of feeling drawn to this, and I say, yeah, absolutely, that's the karmic reset. So then I'll go to India for 6 to 8 weeks, about 2 months. And be there and immerse myself in it. I've got to say that the whole Ayurvedic thing is, it's not cultural specific in that it's so easily translated and applicable to every single place and every single person on this planet. But there is something that is very, very seeped in an Indian way of understanding the world, an Indian orientation around understanding the sacredness of an embodied experience. And there's just a particular Indian way of working with people and of offering treatments that you can only get in India. And that doesn't translate as well. I find that panchakarma, because you need such a huge team, you need a team of doctors, you need a team of therapists, because they work 2 therapists per person for each session. So you need a team of doctors, you need a team of therapists, you need a team of, because cooking is your food is your medicine, so you need a whole team in your kitchen You then need access to these incredible medicines. And so you need more than a team. You need a whole infrastructure for the medicines, and you need very fine yoga therapists. So yeah, I think there are over 100. Well, it depends on the situation, but you need an enormous setup in order to really facilitate a panchakarma. So if there is anyone wanting to do panchakarma, please feel free to contact me for that, because it is something very, very special that really you can only get in India. Yeah, so there's something about Ayurveda that is very, very deeply seeped in the whole Indian experience.
Yeah, I know it's they really, they are working on a cellular level, like you could never
totally
get that level of support and understanding the way you do when.
It's also, the understanding is that our environment is a very powerful influencing factor in our healing.
Yeah.
And, I've seen recently, quite personally, where, somebody might be on their healing journey, but their environment is totally not supporting that. And someone can be on the most incredible healing journey and feel really committed. But if the concentric circle surrounding that, including the society, doesn't energetically and practically support that, you're on your own, you're out on a limb, and it's a lonely, difficult uphill journey. Whereas with Ayurveda in India, you have all those concentric circles as intact, supporting your unfolding to your prakriti, to your essential nature.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And so that time when people can
Sorry, Nick, no bouncing. Very bad for the condition that you just mentioned. Go into the position, just stay there. Vata is movement, pain is vata, no bounce. A little mini consult there. Only to Nick, I say.
Yes, Helen.
You see, Nick, we see you.
We can see you.
I'm turning the camera off.
No, don't.
Please don't. We want to see you.
Lovely to see you.
But I'd really love to hear. Surely there must be questions from other people in the house. I'd love to.
I can see your lovely faces. Dom, Michael, Tanya, Marlene.
Excuse me for a sec while you all get your questions sorted.
I'll say something. Okay, we've got.
I'll be back in a sec. Can we just take a 2-minute break, Elaine?
Sure.
Okay.
Hey,
stretch out.
I think everybody don't go away. I'm going to fill up my teacup with some hot water, and we'll be back. I'll be back in 1 second. Hold on. I'm gonna I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm grabbing a tea bag, and I fill up specially a flask these days. So I'm all ready. So Tanya, it's nice to see you in the house, honey. Please feel free, ask her anything. I know there's some things you're curious about, so even if you want to ask her privately, but it'd be lovely, feel free to ask, Okay. So Dom,
Yeah.
how are you, my darling?
I'm good, Lainey. How are you? Since this morning.
Yeah.
Oh,
See,
my
it's such
word.
an added bonus having the kitchen in the evening, because then I get to
Yes.
see my friends that I don't see regularly during the week in the evenings. We have a social evening together, and I've got like Naomi, who I don't know if she's in front of the camera, but I love that, like it's unlimited to anywhere in the world.
Hi, Mariki.
How you doing?
Hey, Mikey.
How you? How are
Hello,
you?
Dom.
No.
Hello, Mike.
I recorded a class for you today or yesterday.
Thank
It's the
you. You
Wednesday
can
to
just,
freshen up a Wednesday.
I would
'Cause it's
love
been so
it.
long.
Thank you. I
It's weird.
appreciate that, Mike.
I'll send it to you. She was very sweet. I said, okay, so I'll say Mara, it's the Wednesday class. Wednesday. Okay. Helen is back. So Dominic.
So I was just, it really made me think when you spoke about like Anandamaya Kosha and in light of this pandemic, like what is happening on all those different levels that is only kind of, well, it manifested in whatever, COVID, whatever.
Yeah.
But, the world is sick. The world is not, yeah. So like in all those different levels, it then only manifests physically. Do you know what I mean? And it just, I don't know, it was like I don't know,
Yes.
download or an observation or something, but it really made me think.
It was an epiphany moment.
Yeah. One of those moments. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like through the koshas and then,
Yeah. That's the thing with symptoms in the body, with messengers in the body, is that they took a hell of a long time to finally manifest. I mean, we're not talking about, having a car accident or falling off a wall or whatever, but generally illness takes a long time. Nature is terribly patient. I mean, look at our earth. She is so patient. I mean, we abuse her abominably, and she just keeps going. And this is it. This is the world. This is a microcosm, and it is so patient. And I think that's the thing that I would like to communicate to clients, to patients, is be patient. It took so long to manifest. It's not going to go away next week. Okay. And if it goes away next week, it's going to pop up somewhere else until you uncover the root cause. And it might be in an epiphany moment, but generally it's a slow and delicious and fulfilling process. It's not a hard process. It's not a cruel process. It's not an unkind process. It's the kindest process one could possibly do to oneself and to the world. I mean, if we view ourselves as beads on a string, and that every bead counts, by self-nourishing and rebalancing ourselves in this way, this is our gift to the planet. This is our gift to life. It's not just for ourselves. Every person, somebody once said to me, nothing good is ever wasted. Nothing good is ever wasted. And just to be really patient in the process. I think that's the biggest thing I come across in my practice, is that people are impatient. They want the discomfort to go away. And so it's the capacity to bear with that which is not pleasant in feeling in nature. How can we bear with that which is difficult? How can we bear with that which is not comfortable? And as we grow that muscle to bear with that which is uncomfortable, we grow compassion. And as we grow compassion, we get kinder and kinder. Ayurveda is a very kind, a very deeply compassionate way of working with the mind, body, heart stream.
Such a lovely way. You said, you know, it's delicious to get healthy. You know, it's like, you know, and it just made me think, you know, we do tend to, because of the impatience, we think of getting better, and another word is healing, as difficult, which is kind of, you know, then your approach to it is a challenge, is a negative. You put a negative slant to it, as opposed to welcoming the healing, because the minute you embrace it as a delicious opportunity. And I know at times we go through pain and they're difficult things, but I think that for me was a very important distinction of how I chose to approach cancer. I got excited about the healing.
Right.
Because there's so much to learn en route.
Right.
And it's
making... and the healing makes you get one step closer to really coming home. I mean, surely that's exciting. Surely that's delicious.
Yes. And I love the word. I really did feel that, like, to coming home, because you're coming home into this micro, you know,
this matrix.
Yes, and this matrix, you know, and getting to know it actually probably for the first time properly, when that comes.
And the thing is that I really feel like we don't just do it for ourselves. Dominique, like you were saying, you know, you were finding that link. It's like planting another tree in the forest, another healthy tree.
Absolutely. And we are a reflection of our world, and the world is a reflection of us, so there's no separation. I think when you go on that, when you embrace the journey of the healing process, you're embracing a journey of healing the world as well.
I have to agree with that. You know, I think once you start that journey with yourself, then it's sort of, it's like a ripple, you know, it starts around you, you know, your family, your friends, and then it starts your community. And then so each community is like that. And then each community is like a ripple. And then it goes to, like what Dom was saying, then it eventually is the whole world. If you have all the communities, it just grows.
Lovely.
And then it connects.
And I think that's one of the reasons why Ayurveda is taking off in the way that it is that people are really, really hungry for that kind of nourishment, for that kind of coming home. I mean, the thing of Ayurveda in terms of healing is there's these terms, prakriti and vikriti. So your prakriti is your essential nature. Your vikriti is that which is out of balance. And we measure that in terms of the Vata Pitta Kapha, the VPK. So something in the body might be out of balance in terms of the Vata, or in terms of the Kapha, or in terms of the Pitta. Yeah. And as you bring, everything's around rebalancing, as you bring, and it's usually in excess. Yeah, it's very, very seldom in, sort of undernourished. So as you bring the VPK into balance, okay, you get closer. The Vikriti is now not so out of balance, okay? And as you bring the Vikriti into balance, your Prakriti starts coming alive. It's like there was no way of even accessing that essence, because you were dealing with the imbalances of VPK.
I almost kind of, think of it as like, when you're born, I think you're that way when you're born. And then I think it's like having a house, and going through life. Then you start getting cluttered up with things. And then where are you? Where are you at? Yeah. Well, then you have to declutter. And then you find that that
Yes.
place again.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
and it's
yes.
being able to do that, to get to that place, it seems.
Yeah.
You know?
So panchakarma is the ultimate decluttering.
Mm.
Yes.
So I've heard.
It really is. Thanks, Tommy, for asking. Thank you, Mike. Last question. I'm gonna ask if anybody has before we draw this evening to a close. I'm looking around the house. So nice to have seen all of you. So
Can I ask a question before you close?
Yes, Nick. Yes.
How much do you charge, Helen? Is it expensive? How long does the process take?
Well, the process takes as long as it takes for that particular person, and it might be one consultation or it might be 20 consultations. So there's no standard rate, and the fees are very variable because it depends on the treatments. So, and because the oils are expensive, let's say the Shirodhara, which is the pouring of the oil on the forehead, you know that one? Yeah. Okay. That costs 680.
Okay. I don't know what that is. You're going to explain that.
Okay. And then so when they're treatments that use I can't get that word tonight. When there's a lot of preparation, and I've actually got to go and source the materials and buy them at, you know, and then make the stuff at home, or if there's a lot of use of oils, like, you know, like a liter of oil, of good quality sesame oil, then the prices go up. If it's just for, if it's a consultation, an initial consultation for like an assessment, it will be 650. Yeah. If you're doing, let's say, I'll work out a package. If you kind of need like 5 or 10 treatments, then the price comes right down because you make a commitment to that process.
That sounds good.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
So I want to ask, so Helen, can I share your details on the group if people want to get hold of you for consults or...
Yeah, thank you, Elaine.
Yeah, absolutely, because Helen really has the experience over many years, and as you can hear, just so versed and passionate in the subject. And has been an absolute pleasure to have you in the kitchen and join us. And I know it's late for, you know, for those of us that tend to go to bed a little bit earlier, and I'm included in that. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very, very much. It's been really lovely chatting. Much nicer than I imagined. And it really does feel like a conversation in the kitchen.
Yeah, that's exactly my intention, and for all of you that you brought.
Great.
So thank you so much, and please jump back on next week, the same time, same place. Dr. Vignesh is going to be in the house, and I'm hoping Helen will join as well, because then we can have more conversations and more questions. And he's going to thank you. Vanessa's clapped her hands and said thank you. We're going to have a discussion on tapping into our intuition for healing. So thank you, everybody. Those of you who don't have my number, I will put it in the chat, or if you were invited by Helen, Helen will share my, if you can share my WhatsApp number to your friends that joined this evening. And then I will add you to the group and invite you when we have guests. Usually it's every second week. Next week is just an unusual one. Please do come, because next week is going to be one. And then the next time you'll see me is going to be in May, because I'm taking a little break for the first time in 2 years. I'm going away for 3 weeks. So thank you, Helen. Thank you, everybody. Go and have a beautiful, beautiful week ahead, and I'll see you next week.